Hi, my name's Rob and I'm the chairperson of Proud Valiants, Charlton's LGBTQI football supporters group.
My name's Gary Ginor, player manager for Bexley Invicta and vice chairman of Proud Valiants.
I've been supporting Charlton for about 25 years. Since I moved to London, I ended up living in Blackheath and I've always believed in supporting a local club.
I first got into supporting Charlton via my brother-in-law. Well, wasn't my brother-in-law at the time, but he was a local lad, met my sister, and he took me down to the Valley one Tuesday night when we played West Brom, and we beat them 5-0. And I've come from the local area and love football and stayed for the rest of the season, and we ended up getting promoted via the playoffs.
There was a period in my time, in my life when I was growing up, that there was issues around how my sexuality and football worked together. It was something I questioned for a while, partly because of the homophobia that I had actually experienced in football in my earlier days.
Anyone that knows me knows that I've loved football since as far back as I can remember. It's been a massive part of my life, both playing and supporting. You know, the amount of times that I've sat here and watched games win, lose and draw, playing football after school, at school, you know, and since. I didn't play between 18 and 31 because as a gay man I didn't feel comfortable being myself and playing the sport that I love, until I found that there was a local LGBT friendly football club in Bexley that I joined, and you know, I always wanted to play in those years in between, but just never felt that I could play and be myself.
I have never experienced it personally. I have friends that have experienced homophobia in football grounds up and down the country. There's a couple of my friends who have just given up going to football because they just felt that you know, they couldn't actually put up with that kind of sense of humiliation. I don't think people realise how dangerous words can be. There's also been cases where people have actually, I know there's been one case of a friend of mine who actually tried to commit suicide because there's a lot of mental issues around sort of LGBT, and they just felt so uncomfortable going to a sport that they really loved, which meant the world to them, that unfortunately it was one of the reasons why they just felt that there was nothing for them left, you know, to live for, and that is a real tragedy, and you hear stories like that up and down the country.
I think if I was 18 now, or maybe not 18, maybe 20, 22, 24, I would do it all differently. I'd stand up and, you know, I'm a proud gay man, but I'm a proud footballer, I'm a proud Charlton fan. You know, I would do everything different. And, you know, as one of the older players for my team, I'm trying to change the perception that people get, and I want to make sure that the young players in our football club don't go through the same situation that I went through and miss out the best years of their footballing career.
So I think when I first moved to London about 28 years ago, all the magazines and all the publications that were out there for LGBT people really didn't speak about sport, and especially football. Football was looked as a sport that was actually mainly dominated by male players, well obviously by male players. There was very little female football at the time, and also it had a reputation that, you know, people that were LGBT shouldn't support football in these magazines. It wasn't necessarily that's what clubs were saying, but it was what these magazines were saying. And I think, you know, it's only recently that clubs have started to embrace the idea of LGBT supporters and how important it is to actually have clubs that actually LGBT fans can actually form, so that, you know, there is a unity there.
You come to a football game for the match. You know, you go to a social event for the social. It doesn't have to be about your private or personal life. You know, I don't come to a football game to hear any form of abuse, whether it be racial abuse or homophobic abuse. I'm here pretty much like every other Charlton fan would be for the team that I love. And it's a long process and it takes time, but it'll get to the point eventually where we'll look back and we'll think, oh, do you remember the time when, you know, homophobia in football was so strife, and at the moment that's the big topic. But we're probably where we were with racial abuse 20-30 years ago.
I think with Charlton it's always been a more family orientated club, so there's a much more family feel here. You know, the more clubs that actually embrace, you know, people from LGBT communities and actually set up groups like the Valiants that are willing to actually, you know, do the events like here later this year. We've got the tournament, the Charlton versus Homophobia tournament, which will be the second year that we've actually had that here at the Valley. Other things that we're doing within the footballing world, the Premiership is now, you know, really embracing LGBT issues. The EFL are now starting to look at how they can work with LGBT groups, with Pride in Football, with Football versus Homophobia. With all these groups, so it's definitely, you know, a move in the right direction.
I think it's a bit like supporting England. You know, we have all these rivalries within the country of different football clubs, and you know, but when England are playing, we all come together and we're united behind the country. And I think for Charlton fans, you know, you've got 25,000 fans on a Saturday, but you've got people from all walks of life. You've got the older supporters, you've got gay supporters, you know, you've got female supporters, from people from different classes, different backgrounds, but we're all there for one thing, and that's to support Charlton Athletic.
I would say to anybody that is LGBT, whether that's, you know, within football or outside of the game, you know, there are groups out there. If it's a young person, there's lots of youth groups now. There's lots of services out there that you can contact for advice and for help. If you support football, check with your club, see if they have an LGBT group. I mean, here at Charlton, we've got the Valiants. You know, it does get easier. I know that says a lot, you know, and I know a lot of people have trouble coming to terms. I had trouble coming to terms with being gay. I think, you know, there are groups out there, there are organisations, you know, do it at your own speed, how you feel comfortable, you know, but don't forget there are a lot of people out there to help.